Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi wa azwajihi wa zurriyatihi ajma'in. We are continuing our reading of Allama Iqbal's Reconstruction of Religious Thought in Islam. And we have been looking at Hegel's conception of God. We looked at Hegel's conception of God in the last two sessions. And I just want to reiterate a few points and then connect it to Iqbal's discussion of the preserved tablet. So there are a few things about Hegel's conception of God. It's infinite. In this sense that it is all there is. So all finite things, whether nature or individual consciousness, there are moments in the life of this infinite. And this infinite, Hegel calls it God or Geist, sometimes absolute idea. So this God is infinite and everything else is moment in this infinite. So finite is not opposed to infinite, but it's part and parcel of infinite. But that doesn't mean that he equates God with nature or human consciousness or consciousness as such, even though all these are part and moment in the life of God, but they are not God, they are finite. So this is related to the second idea. So this is the first idea. The second idea in Hegel is that this infinite is an idea, is in a sense a potential. So in this sense, this infinite and this idea is an abstraction. Now, this idea is realizing itself in the concrete world. So this idea, which is itself abstraction, a potential, is realizing itself or manifesting itself or expressing itself in the concrete world. So this takes us to the third point, which is that God the infinite idea or potential is incomplete. So it is completing itself through realizing itself in concrete. manifesting itself. So that's why we can't equate nature or manifestations with God, because God is the infinite idea, and these manifestations are only incomplete realizations of that absolute idea. That's why we can't. But in concrete, there's no God except, or there's no reality for Hegel except the sum total of manifestations. So in that sense, our whole universe, with everything which it contains, is as a totality an incomplete God. And incomplete God, but this is not equal to God because God is completing itself. So this manifestation, this realization is continuing. And if this manifestation is completed, then obviously that actualized reality would be God as a totality, because for Hegel, the concrete reality of an idea is the sum total of its manifestation, and the concrete reality of an absolute idea is the sum total of all its possible manifestations. So one thing we can say safely is that Hegel's conception of God as infinite, incomplete, dynamic God is not the idea of a personal God. He doesn't have any idea of creation. And infinite, finite are part of infinite. So finite doesn't exist apart from God, and these finite parts are not God, but they are manifestations of God as far as this point in the history is concerned, as a sum total. So that means that if we talk about Islam, what they call Abrahamic religion, in fact, Abrahamic religion is only one religion, which is Islam. That is the Nass of Quran al-Kareem. Nass of Quran al-Kareem that ما كان إبراهيم يهوديا ولا نصرانيا ولكن كان حنيفا مسلما ملة أبيكم إبراهيم هو سماكم المسلمين من قبل وفي هذا ليكون الرسول شهيدا عليكم وتكونوا شهداء على الناس, and many more ayahs. But if we call these Abrahamic religion from the perspective that they all claim to belong to Abraham, Ibrahim, or Abraham, there are many other ways you can say it, and they are all correct. One important thing is that the God of Ibrahim is a transcendent God. And God of Ibrahim creates this universe out of nothing. And this idea of creation is alien to the Greek mind, whether it is Greek philosophy or Greek um, pagan religions, and Abrahamic God is totally separate from its creation. Its creation is totally dependent on him, and he is not. He is independent, totally independent. Nothing. He doesn't depend on anything. Allahu la ilaha illa huwal hayyul qayyum. He's self-subsistent. He's a living God. لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. This God is totally different from Hegel's God in this sense. Now, Christianity is a bit different case, because Christianity has two dual claims. As far as it is the descendant of Abrahamic tradition, it claims allegiance to a transcendent God. So there is a conception of transcendent God in Christianity. And it claims that transcendent God is totally separate from its creation. And there's a conception of creation in Christianity as far as it is the descendant of Abrahamic tradition. And also Christianity realizes that God is independent of his creation, separate from his creation, doesn't depend on his creation. But Christianity, on the other hand, has another idea as well. And that has come into Christianity from Roman and Greek and other pagan traditions of philosophy and religion. And that's the idea of God manifesting itself in this world, in the form of Christ, for example, who is fully man and fully God. And then the whole conception of Trinity. So in that sense, even though Hegel's conception of God is totally opposed to the Islamic and Judaic conception, it is not totally opposed to the Christian. Because Christianity has this idea that infinite God, infinite transcendent God actually embodies itself in a human form, for example, without losing its divinity and transcendence. And in this sense, when Hegel claimed that he is a Christian philosopher, then he is actually not far off. And as we know, he was trained in a Lutheran seminary, um, and Luther's ideas are very important for Hegel. So that's why when he claims a Christian pedigree for his philosophy, then he is not far off. But he reinterprets Christianity in a way that its Abrahamic element is minimized, as pagan and Roman element is highlighted or is more prominent. And one thing about modernity we should remember: modernity, which is the basis of capitalist civilization we are living in for the last 400-500 years. Although this modernity claims going back to Greece and Rome, and in a sense it is a continuation of Greece and Rome, and as we have seen how Hegel is very much influenced by Aristotle, and in Kant we saw how he is influenced by Aristotle as well as Plato. It is also true that without Christianity, there wouldn't have been any modernity. So, in a sense, modernity is, at least as initially, a new marriage of Christianity and Roman and Greek civilizations. Because Roman civilization or Greek civilization, even though they have conceptions of God and they have ideas about human gods and all this, but they never really considered it as a very serious idea, neither Roman civilization or Greek civilization as a civilization, that human being can become God. And it is Christianity through its reinterpretation of the status of Jesus Christ alayhi salam wa ala nabiyina. This idea, Christian idea that Jesus actually, a human being, became God in some sense, or God manifested himself through him in this world, or embodied himself through him in this world. Christianity gave the idea that human beings can become God. The idea which, as a civilizational, I mean, I'm not saying that Greece or Roman thought didn't have this idea at all. After all, Christianity got these ideas from those civilizations, but as a civilizational reality, I don't think they attributed this idea to human being as God. I think they remain mythology, but in Christianity, an actual man actually was given the status of God. And from there, it was possible to reinterpret Greek and Roman civilization in such a way that they were married to the Christian idea of man God. And whether this man God is at the level of individual as it is in Kant, or at the level of the whole or community as it is with Hegel and Marx, this idea becomes the cornerstone of modernity. And without these Christian ideas, there wouldn't have been modernity. There wouldn't have been any Kant or Hegel. So in that sense, Hegel is not totally far off, when he claims that he's a Christian philosopher. Because what they are saying is, Kant and Hegel are, in their own way, what they are saying is that if Jesus can become a God, Son of God, then as human beings we are all sons of God and equal in that sense. So this transition from one Son of God becoming God to us all sons of God becoming God is not very far off, and this is a crucial point in understanding modernity or modern civilization. Okay, I think we should stop here, and in the next session we will compare this to the preserved tablet and Iqbal's conception of preserved tablet and his reinterpretation of preserved tablet as Hegel's Geist, or a version of Hegel's Geist. Okay.